love about America?
Everything.
Fear is the most devastating of all threats we can have in a democracy.
My friend kept saying they did this in Germany. The great dictators learned from one another what was essentially a blueprint for closing down an open society. The founders wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights with fear. People were hung for speaking up.
And I'm calling on the Attorney General to begin a criminal investigation of the New York Times.
And then what became so chillingly clear to me is that these 10 steps are in place in the United States today.
We don't torture people.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
We don't torture people.
Waterboarding.
We do not, I don't talk about techniques, and we don't torture people. Now listen to me. I want you to listen to me.
America and our friends will meet this threat with every method at our disposal.
We also have to work sort of the dark side, if you will.
All of a sudden, FBI officials came and started interrogating me.
The FBI showed up at my house. You're forced to strip down to absolutely nothing, handcuffs in the front.
Almost immediately thereafter, I was then accused of being a terrorist spy.
Sir, I want to talk to you. Do not arrest me.
Right there. You're under arrest. Stay right there. Back up, back up.
They don't have to watch every one of us for every one of us to be afraid they might be.
There could be ricochets. This is war.
Democracy is fragile, and it's tyranny that's the default.
A society that is willing to give up a little liberty to secure a little security deserves neither and will lose both.
Preventing mass terror will be the responsibilities of presidents far into the future.
From things like Homeland, the Department of Homeland Security. It used to be called domestic security, right? Homeland, Heimat, is a word that became current in National Socialist discourse in about 1931-32. And I realized from my reading that intently, strategically, systematically, a small group of people set out to undermine the Constitution, opening the door for the horror to come.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
The original Constitution, I think it is an imperfect document, and I think it is a document that reflects some deep flaws in American culture, the colonial culture nascent at that time. I think we can say that the Constitution reflected an enormous blind spot in this culture, and that the framers had that same blind spot. It also reflected the fundamental flaw of this country that continues to.
Germany in those years wouldn't have looked so different from today. I mean, we, tend to think, oh, Nazi Germany, it's like a Leni Riefenstahl film. But in fact, Germany in 1930, 31, 32 had gay rights organizations and human rights organizations and feminist organizations. It had celebrities. It had all kinds of newspapers, all kinds of debate, all kinds of dissent. It was a modern state.
I didn't stop with Germany. I started to read about Stalin's Russia and Mussolini's Italy. East Germany in the 50s. Czechoslovakia in the 60s, Pinochet's coup in Chile in 73, and the Chinese crackdown on the democracy protesters at the end of the 80s. The same things recur again and again and again. Little subversions of people's rights, little constitutional changes.
And I saw that the great dictators learned from one another what was essentially a blueprint for closing down an open society.
Language of fear will cause ordinary, decent people to do things that's not in their character.
The first thing is to invoke a terrifying internal and external threat. And sometimes it's a real threat.
After 9/11, the Bush administration used a terrible crime against our nation to launch what it called a, quote, war on terror, unquote.
It looks like one of those scenes of an old building being purposely dynamited and blown up.
Anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under-infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
The way the structure is collapsing, this was the result of something that was planned. It's not accidental that the first tower just happened to collapse and then the second tower just happened to collapse in exactly the same way.
In addition to those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite.
That the White House had no intention of making public.
President Bush was told in August that Osama bin Laden might be planning an attack involving the hijacking.
Could have predicted.
Nobody in our government, at least.
August 6th PDD.
I believe the title was Bin Laden Determined to Attack Inside the United States.
Tyranny is enveloping the globe, and the United States is a shining jewel the globalists want to bring down, and they will use terrorism as the pretext to get out that you call the White House and tell them, we're aware of who the terrorists are if you pull this. This can stop.
I don't think anybody could have predicted that they would try to use an airplane as a missile, a hijacked airplane as a missile.
Nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
No specific threat involving really domestic operation or involving what happened, obviously, the city's airliner and so.
There were no warning signs that I'm aware of.
USA Today reports that in the 2 years before the attacks on September the 11th, NORAD conducted exercises using hijacked airliners as weapons. And one target was the World Trade Center.
Special Agent Wright has material information about FBI negligence and recklessness with regard to not investigating terrorism leading up to the events of 9/11. He is the first active FBI agent to appear before the cameras to speak directly to the American people. Special Agent Wright is coming forward on behalf of the American people at great risk to himself and to others that work with him and are around him. The FBI threatened Robert Wright from coming forward, effectively threatened him with his job.
Although we are told that 4 or 5 of the alleged hijackers were on each of the flights, if so, their names should have been on the flight manifests. But the flight manifests that have been released contain neither the names of the alleged hijackers nor any Arab names whatsoever.
We know that the men who were supposedly the hijackers had their houses, cars, credit cards paid for by the U.S. government. They were, in truth, agents.
Evidence was also apparently planted. The passport of one of the hijackers on Flight 11 was allegedly found in the rubble.
Goes through the fireball, through the side of the plane, and comes down to the ground unscathed. But something happened. For 6 months, they reported they had this passport. Boy, we've got it. We've got the proof. And then the guy stood up and was alive.
Several of these 19 men are still alive.
Of course we're after Saddam Hussein, bin Laden. He's
January 2001, the Bush administration orders the FBI and intelligence agencies to back off investigations involving the bin Laden family, including 2 of Osama bin Laden's relatives, who were living, guess where, in Falls Church, Virginia, right next to CIA headquarters.
When he was already America's most wanted criminal, he reportedly spent 2 weeks in the American hospital in Dubai, was treated by an American doctor, and visited by the local CIA agent.
We have not seen one piece of evidence that links Osama bin Laden directly to the planning stages of September 11th.
This failure to provide proof was later said to be unnecessary because bin Laden, in a video allegedly found in Afghanistan, admitted responsibility for the attacks. This confession is now widely cited as proof. But the man in this video has darker skin, fuller cheeks, and a broader nose than the Osama bin Laden of all other videos. We again seem to have planted evidence.
The connections between the Bushes and the bin Ladens become much more clear when George Herbert Walker Bush made trips to Saudi Arabia in 1998 and 2000 to meet with the bin Laden family on behalf of a company called the Carlyle Group.
Let me remind you of how did the National Socialists come to power?
In Berlin in 1933, the German parliamentary building, the Reichstag, was set on fire. Many historians say this was a staged attack, but it was a terrible shock to people's sense of security. The National Socialists seized on this to pass laws to subvert the German Constitution.
So they said you're not patriotic unless you pass Clause 2 and later the Enabling Acts. It means the state can open your mail. It means the state can listen to your phone calls. It means that you as Parliament give up much of your authority to the leader. And so that legal process prepared the way for everything that followed.
We see now in our own country legal maneuvers that undercut our civil liberties. By October 2001, the White House drove the USA Patriot Act through Congress. The Patriot Act was over 300 pages long. It weighed as much as a baby. It was printed at 3 in the morning, and they had to vote on it by 11 a.m. The Patriot Act gave the government access to wiretapping you, electronically surveilling you, researching your medical records, looking at your bank records, looking at your credit card statements, even looking at the books you checked out of the library, all without you ever having done anything wrong, and all without a warrant. In an open society of due process, right? That means that they have to be able to accuse you of something that you've done. In a closed society, your innocence doesn't protect you. Most chillingly, the Military Commissions Act expanded the definition of enemy combatant to include any innocent U.S. citizen.
Imagine if your family was awakened in the middle of the night by a team of federal officers. Well, that's exactly what happened to a woman and her children in Granville County.
Amanda Lamb is in the newsroom joining us now. And Amanda, we understand that because this case falls under the Patriot Act, a lot of the usual rights for defendants not available here.
Her son was taken into federal custody 2 months ago. She can't get him out, and she can't get any answers. 16-year-old Ashton Lundeby's bedroom is nothing if not patriotic. American flags everywhere. But according to the United States government, this 10th grader, who has never been in trouble with the law before, is now a suspected terrorist.
It's time to lift the arse off the sofa and bring an end to this nonsense, because otherwise we're just building our own prison cell or sitting around while someone does it. Is that sensible? I think not. So, are we going to make a stand now and draw a line in the sand and say here and no further? In fact, we're going to roll this back? Or are we going to wait until it's got really, really extreme, by which time there'll be so much infrastructure in place that drawing a line in the sand will be a serious challenge? I'm sick of this, and I'll tell you why I'm sick of it. Because while these pathetic, naive people, despite all the evidence before them, are looking the other way, oh no, it's just paranoia. While they're doing that, they are allowing these people to impose their will on my children and my life, and I'm not having it. And if people would just engage a few more brain cells, open the eyes and look, they will see the scale of fascism, no other word for it, that we are being subjected to today. And if you don't wake up and you go on looking the other way, well, the fascism just gets more, and eventually by then it'll be too late. Don't look to me for sympathy when it happens, mate, because you got your chance now.